Welcome to the Winning with Shopify podcast. This is the podcast to help you scale your Shopify store into a money-making machine. This episode is brought to you by Retention.com. Retention.com helps Shopify stores make more money by growing their email lists 20 times faster and sending 10 to 15 times more abandoned cart emails. Want to learn more? Check out Retention.com. Book a demo to get 2 times more audience credits for the first 60 days. Now, over to your host, Nick Truman.
Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Winning with Shopify podcast. For anyone that's not tuned in before, welcome. My name is Nick. I've been running the podcast for several years now. It'll be 3 years in June, so 2.5 years in. And we've had some phenomenal episodes. For anyone that's tuned in before, you will know that we are in the middle of a series right now all about retention and retaining customers and building lifetime value. This is obviously in partnership with Retention.com, as you probably just heard in the intro. And if you've been tuning in for a while, you would have seen that all the way through. If you haven't been tuning in for a while, I highly recommend 1st of December, or the first Friday of December. It's the first episode we launched on this. So if you're interested in customer retention and building lifetime value, go and check out some of our previous episodes, and also obviously check out the tool Retention.com. It is awesome. And just to flag, I'm sorry to all of our EU and UK listeners. I should have said this more throughout the series. We covered it in the first episode. You can't use Retention.com in the UK, and we are gutted about that. But you can in the US. Absolutely fine in the US. So make sure you go and check that out. Today, I've got one and another very special guest. I've got 2 people with me today. We don't do this very often, but I'm super excited about this. They're both from a company called Portland Leather Goods. And I'm going to introduce, first of all, the CMO, and his name is MacCoy. So, MacCoy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having us. We're really excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, MacCoy, we'll start with you, and then we'll come on to Matt in a second. But, MacCoy, tell us a bit about your background, a little bit about Portland Leather Goods as well.
Sure. I joined Portland Leather Goods almost 5 years ago. It'll be 5 years in April. It was a much different company when I started. We were founded in a garage, like hopefully most great companies are. And then worked our way up to this workshop that we're sitting in here now. Back when I started, we used to make everything right here in the workshop in Portland. You could walk in the building and all you could hear was sewing machines and clicker presses going on, chopping and sewing all the leather goods. Lots changed since then. COVID kind of did a number on us. So we have since moved a lot of our production out of this building. But we are happier and healthier than ever. So we've been growing and growing and growing. And it's been a wild ride. I started as a digital media specialist, just kind of a random nondescript title off a job posting on Craigslist, and we've worked our way up to where we are now. So we've been doubling each and every year. It's hard to do that more than a few times in a year and not be, a decent sized company. So we're happy, we're healthy, we love it. I love it here.
Nice. And supply chains, we will come back to that. That is a really valid point and something we've covered a lot in the podcast. We'll come back to that in a second, and making products. But obviously, without further ado, Matt, you are the marketing manager there at Portland Leather Goods as well. Welcome to the show. And can we get the same sort of thing from you? What's your background? How long have you been with the business?
Sure, Nick. I've been here just over 2 years now. Came from print advertising, and then I moved into a digital role at my previous job, which was, oddly enough, a printer. And then just 2 years ago, we've exploded. Even then, like MacCoy was talking about 4 years ago, and then 2 years and doubling. So it's been a great ride. It's been really fun to see all the big changes that have been happening. So really excited to be here.
Nice. And obviously print is a massive sidestep. And you said you had a digital role, but in print previously. It is amazing to see how many people in marketing have actually come from that background as well. So I'm sure you've got lots of good stories to add, and we'll certainly come on to some of those as we go through. But come back to you, MacCoy. Let's talk about supply chains. And Matt, feel free to jump in with anything else on this as well. But we did a whole series where we were asking merchants specifically, and about a year ago or possibly a couple of years back, specifically about supply chains. And the reason this came up was actually because of a lot of drop shippers. And we were talking to successful brands who were saying, never drop ship. You need to own your supply chain. So tell us a bit more about that. You said you're bigger and happier than ever at the moment. Like, obviously, COVID probably drew part of that, drew up part of the change and the reason for change. But how did all of that come about? Like, what did you guys actually do? What did you learn along the way?
Yeah, we were pretty fortunate through COVID. We kind of saw the warning signs like really early, and then fortunately we saw kind of like the potential that was coming on the tail end of COVID to like really take advantage of the opportunity, like when everyone was feeling a little down and try to explode. So our supply chain, fortunately, is decently healthy in that we've only ever used the best cow hides we could ever possibly get our hands on. Fortunately for us, those come as a byproduct of the American meat industry. So there's not a single cow in the United States that is harvested for its leather. They're all harvested for meat. So the best cowhides come from the United States. They're then sent to Leon, Mexico, or various other places in Mexico. Mexico is a huge leather industry capital of the world. So the majority of our materials were fortunately pretty secure because we're going from United States down to Mexico and then back. We did have quite a bit of disruptions when it comes to things like hardware or various other things. So just in general, a lot of things slowed down. And then even the leather industry was affected in certain ways. Certain chemicals that are used in the tanning process had delays and setbacks and alternates substituted in that caused some disruptions. But for the most part, we were pretty healthy. Where we really faced a lot of issues was actually like being able to keep up with the demand as far as production. As I mentioned, we were working here in a little studio. So when the COVID pandemic hit pretty hard, it's obviously hard to be congregated in here, elbow to elbow with somebody here next to a sewing machine.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, especially in a town like Portland, it's really hard to find people who are talented sewers. It's not a well-maintained skill through the decades. And so we ran into a bunch of issues with that. Fortunately, we were able to kind of swing again closer to where our leather is actually being tanned in Leon, Mexico. And we were able to start up a production company there. So we did what most people wouldn't do. We actually started our own factory instead of just looking for a factory, which has been quite the wild ride. But I'm happy to report that business, that company is super happy. They're super healthy. We're incredibly proud of that. And that's been, literally probably the biggest and the best shift that we made during COVID. And it's allowed for expansion of the company and growth and things like that. So while we did hit supply chain issues, we came out the other end of it, like with the best case scenario. And I think that was, again, that's just looking ahead at what opportunities were available and not, I think a lot of people, got hit and they kind of stayed down and we tried to get back up as quickly as possible.
Yeah, definitely. And we will get on to customers and lifetime value and retention in a sec. I've got one more question on this as well, because you've touched on something quite interesting where you've said that you've obviously come out the other side of this and it's, one of the best things ever. But obviously it could be, there's no pain, no gain at the time. But I guess one of the points to make is you must have had so much more flexibility now that you own the production chain, because you can develop new products quickly. You don't need to talk to a factory and explain how to make it. You're just like, guys, you are the factory. What's wrong with making the product at the moment? And they'll tell you straight away, this is difficult. That's the number one thing that comes in for repairs, and we could fix it like this. And I guess you could just say to them, cool, crack on. Whereas there's that disconnect when you're using someone else to manufacture.
Yeah, it really is like a superpower. Again, we kind of had polished that process quite early, being as we were designing and making all the products 30 feet away from our desk, with a guy sewing them in the corner. Yeah. So we were really used to like this incredibly lean process. In fact, most of the time we didn't actually carry inventory. An order would come in primarily through Etsy in the early stages, and then later Shopify, heavy into 2019, 2020, when Shopify became the dominant platform. But an order would come in and we would make that item on the spot. So we were incredibly lean at all times. That came with its downsides, right? Where if you had a surge in demand, like it was really hard to make sure no one's sick this week, right? Because we got to make all these products. But that lean process, I think, is really what allowed us to transfer that production system down into Leon and inside our own company. We understood that so intimately, which I think is a huge cheat code compared to somebody who's just ordering a product from a supplier. We were so used to actually making the products ourselves and seeing that process. So it was really helpful to transfer that lean process. And it's still lean today. As you mentioned, we're really close to the product development side. We can get, if we were really motivated, and a lot of times we have, long-term production plans that would interfere with this. But if we were really motivated, we could get a product to market in just a couple of months, so 2 months or so, 8 weeks, if we were really, really motivated. The demand might sell out, but nonetheless, it's nice to be that lean and to be that in partnership with our production, again, being it as it's a part of our company. So.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful. And the other thing you touched on very briefly, and we'll move on to customers now, I think. But yeah, the final point to make as well is just about excess inventory. From any financial perspective, if you're sitting on excess inventory, it's money that's locked. It's money you can't spend because it's locked in products. And then if you can't sell those products, it's a loss because you've paid to manufacture them. So I think having a low inventory that's quick to replenish means that you're selling at any sort of given speed that you're producing. Therefore, it's not costing you anything to do. I know certainly when I ran a Shopify store years ago, we would buy in a massive shipping container of stuff, and then we had to try and sell it. And then naturally, when it was nearly sold, it was like, oh no, we need to order another one. And it was just this constant, and it would take another sort of 2 or 3 months to be manufactured and arrive. And it was such a problem. We either had too much stock or too little at all times. So our cash flow was just terrible. We've had too much cash or not enough cash. So it certainly sounds like you guys have made some really good decisions on that. So leaning in then to customer growth, customer acquisition, let's set the scene a little bit. Like, I guess a good question to start with is, what are some of the key things you guys have done that have contributed to your growth over those years beyond what we've spoken about with supply chains and manufacturing?
Do you want to take a work?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the biggest things there is we've diversified into so many different channels since MacCoy mentioned going down to Mexico and opening up that studio there. From Pinterest, as MacCoy can touch on later, to way heavier into Facebook, Google, email is just exploding, SMS exploding, a loyalty program, and then reutilizing Facebook groups, which started popping up more during COVID, and building out that community, and just building a really strong community of customers so that they can all talk together, because obviously word of mouth is hands down going to be your best marketing. So diversifying those channels has been a huge thing for us at Portland Leather Goods, which is really nice.
Let's go on a really quick tangent on that, because you mentioned Meta and you've mentioned Facebook, but Facebook groups. I know a lot of people see these groups and go like, oh look, a whole group of target customers. How do I sell to them? What's your strategy been with Facebook groups in particular?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty much hands off in terms of, like, we built a insiders group, PLG insiders, and then from there we just kind of let all the customers and anybody who, even if you're not a customer, talk to each other, relate with each other on a daily basis. Like, even if it's not about leather bags or leather footwear, they're talking about like their daily lives. It's very organic. It feels very natural, and that has been extremely explosive for us, which is awesome.
And MacCoy can talk about how it kind of started with PLG groupies.
Yeah, we really saw potential for Facebook. Like, our Facebook group is outstanding. If you're a marketer listening to this, or whoever you might be, I would recommend joining our Facebook group, PLG Insiders. We get several hundred posts a day. We're doing 25,000 comments a week and up to 60 to 80,000 reactions, be it likes or what have you, per week as well. Wow. And it's just growing like like wildfire. That really started kind of as a result of us having our finger on the pulse as advertisers, and seeing that we were getting a lot of comments on ads. We then created these characters who are an amalgamation of the different dogs' names that run around our workshop. That's really our social media personalities. And so we have different characters. Nice. They're not actually real people. And so that allows them to kind of, be free and be, enthusiastic in a way that they don't have to, personally vouch for under their personal profiles. So they started engaging with those people on advertisements. And so we started to build what was essentially like a forum board in the comment section of our advertisements. Mm-hmm. We would run creative for a long time, where most people might believe in like a creative exhaustion. We were like, oh my gosh, we had this post has 1,000 comments on it. Like, we're going to run this till the wheels fall off, basically. That slowly morphed into that conversation, like, naturally migrating elsewhere. We were very fortunate that there was already a group dedicated to another brand, which I'll probably avoid naming just for the sake of it. So it became the Portland Leather Goods /brand group. Long story short, they eventually kicked the other brand's name and identity out of the group. This is all organic, by the way. We had nothing to do with this. And it just became the Portland Leather Goods groupies.
Just so we're clear, there was another company running a group. You guys joined, and they got kicked out, the original brand.
It's in so many words. So this was a self-made fan group of this other brand. And it's a large, popular national brand. So this was a fan club, essentially, right? And it had quite a bit of members at the time. I think it was 8,000 or so. So they kicked that group essentially out. They were like, okay, we've had our fill. We're done talking about this group. And so we were left. We weren't running it at all. We had this group of about 8,000 people dedicated to Portland Leather Goods. Inside, they called themselves the Groupies. That was the brand, the group name. Okay. We let that rock for probably 8 months by itself, 10 months. We would sort of, feed it organically, like, toss some insider information in there every once in a while, but we were very, very hands off. We wanted it to be a community. We then launched our own Facebook group early last year, March 2020. And since then, it just has exploded. So we're either just hit or we're approaching 50,000 members. And the conversation in there is just wild. And that's really, like we mentioned, that community comes off the back of what is our product strategy, which I think kind of touched back to your original question is, and this is all credit to our owner and founder, Curtis Matsko. Curtis is not an egotistical person in the sense that we try to create as much product per value or price per value in the product as possible. So if you look at our products, we sell them for cheaper than almost anybody out there. We use higher quality materials. We do better construction. We sell them for cheaper than anyone out there. That pleasant experience of having like, oh my gosh, I paid this many dollars and I got this much value for the product has just created like a cult following. And so we really owe that product strategy. That's the success for the community. Because if it was imbalanced in the other way, where people were paying too much and not getting the value out of it, we wouldn't have this cult following. But people are so excited about what it is we offer, and it really is a fantastic product. As soon as you pick it up, you feel that. And so they need somewhere to talk about it. They need somewhere to have a community. They need somewhere to trade and buy and sell and things like that. So it's been fantastic.
Wow. And I think, so many points you've touched on there that I think are just brilliant. And they're similar things we've had on the podcast before, but in a very different way. So we talk a lot about you need a good product. And I know the word good is so subjective, but the fact you guys have that product is obviously why the whole Facebook group scenario, should we call it, or incident, is a result of that. People like your products. They want to engage with those products. And I definitely feel like there's a lot of brands out there that they have a good range of products, but not a great range. There's nothing unique about them. They're not selling them in a unique way. They don't have that story, which then means customers will not be driven to do this sort of thing. I love the fact as well you were talking about that our products are cheaper and better made. That was very much, I read a whole book about how the US adopted the Japanese kind of quality cost less culture. I think it was Ford Motor Cars it all sort of started with. But yeah, it's a fascinating story that actually just paying more doesn't always get you more. In a lot of scenarios it does. You pay more to get a better seat on some sort of transport, like a plane or whatever. But certainly when it comes to goods, it depends on where they've come from. And actually, if you guys can get that message across that we make all our own stuff. So if you're paying us, you're just paying us, which actually means it costs less because we're all one unit. There's not sort of 3 or 4 different profit streams that need to be created in this. It's just one. But yeah, the Facebook groups thing, I think sounds amazing. I think there's some really inspiring stuff in there that I think more brands should definitely get involved in. Now, we've mentioned email and SMS, and obviously you guys are a retention.com customer, aren't you? How do you guys, I'm not going to ask you how do you find retention.com because we've had them on here already. We know what the product does and how it works. How do you guys use that data? So you get the data of everyone coming on the site. How do you guys use it? What do some of the user journeys look like off the back of that? What do some of the email campaigns look like?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of our advertising, top of the funnel, whether it's Facebook or Pinterest, is really product focused, product driven. It's beautiful product. The leathers, the browns, everything just pops on a screen. So we definitely lean a lot of our advertising that way. So then when a user comes to the site, they clicked on some sort of product ad probably 90% of the time. And then what we can do with that user, that anonymous user, once we find their identifiable email address or whatever it may be, I can put them into certain campaigns, product campaigns, send them campaigns to get engagement, to see, are they opening? Are they clicking? Are they going to place an order off the first or second email that I send them? And again, they're obviously tagged with their source, so I'm able to segment within Klaviyo and figure out where should that customer go along the journey. So if they're opening and I can see they're engaged, but they haven't placed an order yet, they need to be in a different flow, right? So then I get them in like a kind of a welcome-like flow, slightly different from the regular forum pop-up welcome flow. And then from there, I keep track of that 5 to 6 email flow. And again, I'm watching their journey as they come in, come out of that flow, and just trying to gauge which campaign does that customer need to be in next. Because at this point, we're sending a lot more campaigns than we did in 2022. And that kind of started late Q3 when we signed up with retention. And it's been great. So yeah, we've been able to push millions of more emails, and it definitely helps gauge the customer way faster by sending a high frequency of emails and getting them out of a flow faster or putting them into their proper segments much faster, just sending way more emails. And that's kind of the approach we've taken, and it's worked great.
And I guess, and this is a big and very old email question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. See, it sounds like you guys were sending not a lot of emails previously. You've now got way more people to target in different stages of their journey, more people to hit, therefore more segmentation. And I think that is part of the upside of retention is I can now get email addresses of almost everyone that's been on the site, as opposed to just previously the ones that filled out a form or bought
Correct.
a product. So I guess the big question here is how often are you sending now? And I guess a sub question: do you find there's a balancing point? Have you managed? We've all had bad marketing days. Have you found that point where you've sent too many and you've gone, oh my gosh, the unsubscribe rates now are crazy? Or do you find actually as long as the story's strong, it's all good? Like how are you finding all of that?
Sure. So I would say like in 2022, for context, we probably sent 2 emails a month, sale emails. And then obviously we had flows running. Regular flows running, whether that be browse abandonment or cart abandonment flows. But again, late Q3 of 2022, we started at 1 a day because our email list was sub 1 million. It was sub 600,000 profiles. So we started at 1 a day because I had to mix in. I didn't want people actually getting 1 email a day from us because that can definitely get nuanced. But the whole goal of the 1 a day email was to maintain a pulse on like spam rate, unsubscribe rate, things like that, and really adhering so that our domain authority, we're not shrinking. Our deliverability remained high. In those first couple of weeks, if they went directly into a flow, the spam rate was higher because we didn't mix engaged customers that we already had within that flow.
Okay.
So then we pivoted. We talked with the team over at retention. And what we pivoted towards was a campaign first strategy and then a flow strategy, like I mentioned earlier on. So what we would do would mix engaged customers with those anonymous traffic that we gather from retention. And that would help reduce the spam rate. And then it would reduce the unsub rate because there'd be more people in that pool that were opening and clicking that we knew already worked. Yep. And our spam rate went way down. And then as far as the unsubscribe rate, definitely a little bit higher than it's been in the past. But my belief and the team at retention, unsub, if they do not want to hear from you, totally fine. You can leave the ecosystem of Klaviyo. That's okay. We want the people that are engaged, opening, that want to see the product on a every other day basis and things like that. So.
Yeah, definitely. Something you've hit on there that I think is really key, and I hear clients that we work with talk about this all the time, is they're always scared, and I've said to clients before, and I love your idea of send 1 a day, but not to everyone. Because from your own personal perspective, in terms of managing that email, now you're sending 1 a day, it starts to become a bit more like advertising, doesn't it? Because it's now real time. I'm sending every day. I send an email. I get in the next morning and see what was the result of that email. What did I learn? What can I do differently? And you start to build that flow, which is cool. I think a lot of brands, certainly ones that I've spoken to, they're scared to send more emails because they think they'll annoy people and lose them. And what you've just said, I think, is really key. If they don't want to engage anyway, they're a waste of time on our email list. So let's lose a big chunk of them on the basis that the ones we don't lose are now going to be buying way more products. And there's probably a good amount of people in anybody's list who are sitting there going, if you just sent me a good product, a good offer, something new, I am keen to buy, but you're just not talking to me enough.
For sure. And I'm not going to lie, I think we were a little hesitant at first too. Yeah. And it's a small, nimble team of graphic designers and then these 2 dudes. and so like, it was definitely out of the realm for us to do like 1 a day. We've since moved on from 1 a day because the list has grown so much that I am able to mix throughout the week, where it could be like 2 or 3 emails a week versus 1 a day. But yeah, at first it was kind of like, oof, that's a lot of emails. But really, you don't need a ton of emails. You just need a ton of different segments, and you can reuse that email, switch out the header. What we ended up doing with the graphic designers was actually building out probably anywhere from 10 to 15 different templates that were just like solid, ready to go, plug and play, move a block here, drop a new header in here. So like, oh, let's do a product focused template with this product, have this email for me in 2 hours, boom. So we were able, actually, it's helped us a lot with the process of building these creative assets, which has been kind of like a nice little win on the side.
Yeah. And last question, possibly only for now on email, but the last one is, how do you segment? Like, how do you, say someone's got 500,000 signups like you guys had before you started scaling things last year. Someone's got 500,000 people in there. How do you segment? How do you know to segment? How do you start going, okay, these people here want this, these guys want this? Where do you start with that? Do you just start sending emails, looking at the data? Do you profile them? Do you use another system to get some more information on them? Like, where do you go?
Sure. So another platform we use is Yapo, and that actually has helped a little bit with segmenting certain people like our insiders. It's like we don't technically have the exact data of who an insider is. This is just an example, but we have it as one of the campaigns, so people can get points for joining the insiders, and then I would know who's in the insiders, their email address. So that's just like one segment.
Nice.
So I know like those people are going to be the highest, most engaged customer that we have.
Yeah.
And then I can kind of use that as a standard for like, what does a super engaged customer who places a few orders every quarter look like, right? So then I use that kind of as the top tier. And then from there, I can use other campaigns within that platform and use those email addresses and be like, well, this person places like once a quarter or once a year. So then what kind of emails does this person need? What is the lookalike within Klaviyo for that segment? And honestly, there's a lot of segments in my Klaviyo account, especially adding since Q4.
I'm sure there are.
But yeah, it's great.
Absolutely. So I think, some of the things you've hit on there that I think are really key then is looking at the frequency that people are ordering, whether they're signed up to your loyalty program. You can mention Yotpo as much as you want, by the way. They sponsor the podcast at least twice.
Okay, great. Good. All right, I was going to say, that's probably going to be dropped out. I didn't even think about that.
No. Yotpo are cool. We're also partners of theirs. We work with them a lot. Same as Trustpilot, which is quite ironic. So we have both. But yes, Yotpo's loyalty program. Again, I think it's a really smart thing to do, actually, to link that with Klaviyo, to go, actually, if you are subscribed to loyalty. And I guess another thing you can look at as well is how much people use the loyalty, because that could become an email in itself saying, did you know you've got a load of points sitting on the 100%. System?
It just allows for another email. It's just another opportunity to create an email. And it's super obviously relatable content. So.
And how much? Sorry, I said it was going to be the last question email. I thought of another one that I think is really key. Is how much do you guys do things like creating lookbooks or blog posts or other content as opposed to just sending an email out? Sorry, to using an email as opposed to just sending an email going like, "Hey, there's a sale on. There's a new product. Buy this. Buy this. Buy this." How much do you guys focus on building the relationship and the story before then hitting them with an offer?
Sure. I would say the heaviest, most used email we use is like a product focused one, but we're not saying like, hey, this product is 25% off today. It's just kind of showing different angles of like a shoe or different angles of how a bag can be worn. Just kind of giving them the idea of how they can use it in real life. So that's like probably the number one most used template we use. And then from there, we use a few of our blogs to like relate with people who have placed an order and need to know more about like, hey, how to care for your bag or how to wear a felt hat. So we'll do emails like that kind of just tell this story as a whole. So yeah,
I'd say like find a way to make it like fresh, but don't put too much demand on like having to tie an email with a whole other piece of creative. Yeah. Like if that's the demand every time you send an email, like it has to combine, to a whole blog post where you have to have some sort of like great story or great offer attached with it. It's going to limit the total number of like emails you can send, and that's going to that's not going to be good in conjunction with a software like acquisition.com, where it's going to rely, at least for us, because we're collecting so much, on a more frequent send of emails to make sure that spam and unsubscribe rates are staying like in check with what's normal when you flood again a list with this new batch of email segments or email contacts. Right?
And like. Yeah, I think the keeping in touch point is really, really key, because some businesses we talk to say like people buy our product once or twice a year max. Or actually, like we had the guys from Purple Mattress on the other day, and they were like, "When do you buy a mattress for your bed? Like 5 years if you replace it like on time. 10 years is even longer." So they said a lot of their email strategy was upselling other products, or actually it was just keeping in touch. It was like, okay, we've got 5 years now to keep you entertained, so you buy another one in 5 years, and actually closer to that 5 year point. And it's almost like there's a sort of newsletter and a flow that go out every month. So there was one in the middle, one at the end of the month. End of the month would be like, this is just, here's what's going on at the moment, normal email, and that would be to different segments, etc., etc. But the mid-month one would be almost like they didn't know it was a countdown, but it would be counting down and slowly getting closer to like, in 6 months, you're going to have to think about changing your mattress. Why don't you watch our latest video on how to know when your mattress needs to be changed? And it's like, okay, so you've kept engaged, so you're not in the spam bit 'cause you've been emailing them for 4 years so far, and all this kind of stuff. So I think the keeping in touch ones is really really key, and it's interesting to hear how you guys are using a mix of keeping in touch with by this product.
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on your earlier question, which was like, how does acquisition or how does something like this fit into the business as a whole? I mean, we're very aggressive advertisers. We're very aggressive marketers. We're sort of like badly phrased theory is that customers are not fishing a pond; they're more like fish in a stream, right? So there's not, everyone thinks, oh, you know, if I'm out of this product or if I come up with a better idea tomorrow, that same customer will be sitting there waiting for me. And we sort of take the opposite approach, which is like full throttle every day. Like we're trying to grow as fast as possible. Yeah. That's being reflected in our business performance. We actually just got word this morning. We made SimilarWeb's list of top 100 fastest growing digital companies. We are number 8 in the fashion and apparel market. Awesome. Thank you very much. Number 7 is Skims, Kim Kardashian. So we hope to be on that list again next year. So things are working for us. Nice. We look at marketing and advertising as a whole as an amplification tool. It's something to make more people aware of an efficient business or a business that's selling a good cost to value ratio of products. And so for us, again, we're advertising heavily and aggressively every day of the week, every month of the year. So when we first heard about attribution.com, we were like, okay, how can this fit in our strategy? And at its core, what it really does is bring us closer to the point where we can spend advertising dollars confidently, because we know, although it may be a day, a week, a month away, we're eventually picking up sales as a result of that traffic coming into the website. Although it's not happening as a direct result of that sale, or maybe you're losing attribution, which obviously is an issue. We use tools like Triple Whale, which we're huge fans of, to sort of get a better pulse on that. But acquisition.com and having that amount of emails like coming in and being able to close that many more sales brings us closer and closer to the point where it's like, essentially, the business is just paying for traffic, and we're doing that profitably at this point. Like, there's still a demand for good creative, there's still a demand for good product, but we know pretty confidently each and every day that advertisements that we run are going to come back, whether it be through that direct advertisement or we're picking up through like a well-calibrated email system like Matt's running here using contacts like acquisition.com. I think the funnest stat for us is it took us about 6 years to build our email list to the point where Matt mentioned previously it was just under 600,000, and we've been using acquisition for how long now? Retention.com. Oh, excuse me, retention.com. I apologize. I'm so bad at doing that. I'm going to get absolutely roasted by Adam for that. I watched another video where acquisition.com is mentioned. But this is retention.com. Adam and I are
good friends. It's all good.
Adam, I am sorry. I apologize, buddy. You can cut that or leave it. I'll just give you a couple sound bites so you can crudely paste over. Retention.com. Nonetheless.
You're still paying
as I mentioned.
Nothing to complain about.
We pay a big bill of his, so he should be a little bit happy with us. But nonetheless, Where are we at today, Matt?
We're at closing on 1.5.
So it took us, and how many months we've been using it?
End of September.
So from September to today, we've tripled our email list. And it took us 5 years to get to the point where we were before. And it's working. So we're huge fans of retention.com. I'm sorry again, Adam. I'll hear about it later.
All good. And I guess a really, really important point to bring this back round to is there's a lot of stuff that goes without saying here, isn't there? You're making good money back from these email lists. I think lifetime value is one of those things that anyone who's been tuning in for more than about 6 months will know I bang this drum a lot, so apologies. But as someone who works a lot in advertising and customer acquisition, if clients on average, for example, could get 2 sales from every customer, and we're getting a 3-to-1 ROI on Google, it's now 6. I mean, maybe call it 5.7 because there's cost for Klaviyo, retention, your time, all cost the business. But all of that is insignificant compared to what Google or Facebook or Pinterest or somebody else is going to charge you for advertising. So, I mean, you mentioned, I think it was Tripaway you mentioned, you guys are doing something to do attribution, and attribution is this lead balloon of the room that I try not to talk about too much because it's so complicated. We've been trying to get a guest on for a while to talk about it, and I have agencies like you wouldn't believe queuing up to want to come on here and expose themselves to our audience and Shopify merchants. As a merchant, though, attribution, how do you handle it internally? How do you look at Google ads and Meta ads and go, Facebook's making us profit? Like, what does that look like for you guys both? Kind of the initial customer acquisition, also lifetime value? How do you record those things?
So we have the luxury of having a very like understanding founder who's also a marketing brain himself. And so I was actively advertising heavily on Facebook. This is slightly before Matt came, when iOS 14 rolled out and basically destroyed attribution for Facebook. So we were able to see
July
basically
21,
like,
I remember it.
yeah,
well.
what a dark time, right? So we were able to see like, okay, we're putting this many dollars in, and Facebook first party data is giving us this awesome reward, and all of a sudden that's gone. But revenue on the website still looks good. So we know that things are happening. So for quite a long time, to be honest, we were flying blind. We were just basically spending. We had a good understanding of like what our ad creative was like, how to build our campaign structure, and we were basically flying blind. We're seeing no ROAS come in on the first party. We eventually hooked up with Triple Whale, and we were like, okay, breath of fresh air. It's still there, just like we always knew it was. But we take a pretty liberal approach when it comes to attribution. We're spending a lot of money on different platforms, right? And so I think that attribution is sort of a fallacy in that I'm definitely interested in knowing that money eventually resulted in a sale. I'm not as interested in exactly and granularly knowing exactly which piece of creative or word that it resulted in when I look at the business as a whole. Now, I'm interested in that granularly when it comes to like perfecting ad creative and getting better at that skill. But as far as the subject of attribution going, like, is the business achieving its objectives? We tend to focus on broader metrics such as MER, or we refer to it as broad ROI. Like, how many dollars am I putting in this marketing system? How much is coming back in revenue? And for us, we tend to run around 20% MER or broad ROI. So as we scale the business, as I mentioned, doubling every year, that has never been out of whack, although attribution has never fully reflected that, either in first party or even through a third party like Triple Whale. So we are much more willing to see a lower ROAS than we would potentially need fully realized, because we know that that's happening on the back end. We know that Facebook and we know that Google are working in tandem to create a sale. We know that Pinterest is, bringing people into the platform, and Google's closing them out when they research the brand name on Google. So we are probably a little bit more liberal with it than most might be. That being said, like, because we really are like a marketing company at its core, a performance marketing company at that, and a direct marketing company at that. So we really have a good handle on all of this. But all that to say that the marketing team is, you're looking at them, basically just Matt and I, we run all of the ads. And all of the paid media. So if that answers your question, like, basically, like, my question to people is like, okay, why are you so interested in exactly and granularly knowing that that's where that sale's coming from, if it's not from the perspective of polishing and getting better at ad creative? Is the business healthy? Like you mentioned, LTV, like, we're big on like, okay, maybe I broke even on this ad, and you have to look no further than like subscription-based businesses to know that like they're losing money on the first sale. It takes them a while. And they're borrowing against the LTV of the customer to make that acquisition happen. And if you sort of like clinch up and you're like, oh my gosh, attribution's a nightmare, I don't know where my sales are coming from, but you start shutting off ads and sales go down, okay, there's an issue here. Like, you really need to like take a broader look at your business and be like, okay, although I can't connect every last sale to an ad spend, I'm losing money by not spending this money. Like, am I okay operating in a little bit of uncertainty? And if the answer is no, like, I'm sorry to tell you, it's not going to go well for you, because attribution's not going well for anybody. So you have to be a little bit looser with that. You have to focus on the business objectives as a whole and use broader metrics. Again, assuming that your ad creative is good, not junk. You're not just burning money, in a dumpster. But that has allowed us to scale out of control, borrowing from future LTVs of customers, and at the same time, increasing that LTV. So we know that, okay, they purchase again, their LTV becomes blank. Well, I'm going to borrow a certain amount of dollars from that future LTV and invest it in the acquisition of the customer. And if you're not willing to do that and you don't have a handle on your business, then it's going to be really hard for you to make a case for that, whether it to be your founder, maybe you're the founder, to your CFO, God forbid, because he's never going to want you to burn money. That doesn't exist yet. So that's how we do it. And that's allowed us to scale incredibly fast. And again, at the graciousness of our founder, who understands that process, which is nice that we don't have to go through that barrier of explaining imaginary numbers every time.
Well, that's perfect. And if any of my clients are listening, rewind, listen to that 10 more times, please. the important things I think you've touched on, and this is where it becomes really frustrating. And GA4 is the next kick in the nuts, I'm afraid, when it comes to attribution. We did an event on it with Trustpilot last week in central London. So yeah, we're fully up to speed on that. Performance Max and Google's been another one. The real challenge we've got as marketeers, and I think just to echo what you've said, is customers now do not just click on a single advert and then make an impulse buy. Some do, but we're talking like 10, 20%. And actually, we're not interested in those guys because they'll buy from us and then they'll make another impulse buy and buy from somebody else, you know, in the next month. And they won't stay with us, and they're not the customers we really want. It's the retained customers, and a good retained customer is going to be a good lifetime VIP customer. They're going to shop in multiple places. And I don't know if you guys have seen this as well, but the last 6 months with things like energy prices going up, there's crazy things going on in the world. There's big debts left after COVID in most government and public pockets. Because of things like that, people are making much more considered purchases, which means when you look on your Google Analytics, it's like, oh, we should spend more on direct. And you're like, we can't. That's not a channel. Like, you can't spend more on direct. So, but we not by choice, but we had a situation with a client recently where they started spending loads of money on social, and our PPC, we increased the budget a bit, but the ROAS almost doubled as a result of social doing something. And we had no data to prove that was happening. We can't say for sure that this person who clicked on a social ad or saw this also Googled us and found something, because they changed device, they went home and told their partner, who then used their device, and now Google's lost them. You know, there's loads of ways you can lose that tracking link. The thing that happened next, though, is they fell out with their social media agency. So they fired them and just stopped all social. Our ROAS plummeted. They got a new agency back in, and I said, get that same spend on straight away. So 3 or 4 weeks it was off. They put it back on, and Google ROAS just shot up. And that wasn't just people Googling them because they'd done a brand awareness on Google. It was direct campaigns. It was non-brand search. And so I think you're absolutely right. Having this more holistic view to like, who's our customer? What's the best way to reach them, and what's the best message? And then doing, I personally, even as someone who works on Google a lot, I think a good place for brands to be spending their time right now is just send a ton of traffic into the site that seems logical, that makes sense, and do it as tactically as possible, and then work on on-site conversion and lifetime value, because those are the things you can control. So,
Nick, magic to MacCoy's ears right there, man.
Yep.
You just spoke sweet goodness into that ear.
Yeah, we talk about that. You're nailing it. Like, I don't envy your position as an agency owner to have to explain that to businesses who don't get it. The truth is, if they don't get it and it's really a hill to climb, like I would worry about them long term. But the truth is like advertising does not solve your issues. There's no sweet words. There's no beautiful photos that's going to solve an inefficient business's issues. All it's going to do is amplify those. You're going to start burning money. So for us, like, again, we're in charge, and Matt and myself personally, we're in charge of everything from like making the customer aware. And then I actually run all the web team as well. So as much as we invest in like advertising efficiency, we're also investing in website efficiency. I use this analogy often, and I'll just use some random numbers, and so they won't be exactly accurate, and forgive me here. But the idea is this, that if you're running ads, or you're an agency and what have you, and you have, let's say your entire account is running an average of a 2 times ROAS. You're spending whatever amount of dollars in 2 times ROAS. Let's say your customer, or in your case, your customer, the business owner, or we as the business, decide we're going to raise prices 10% that day. Okay, what's going to happen? Like maybe you might not see an impact necessarily in revenue, because let's say, revenue or total number of volume of sales decreases, but it's enough per, revenue per unit to make up for that. So you're like, okay, no change to revenue.
You've gained 10% of the price, so it balances.
Yeah, exactly. But what also can conversely happen is, let's say that you do actually see an honest drop in revenue. Well, you're also going to see that reflected in a decrease in the ad account performance. And the scary thing is that's going to affect every single ad across all of your ad platforms, all of your campaigns, all of your ad sets. You're going to see a dip. Okay, so what do? So conversely, if I make a good decision, I decide to make my business more efficient. When I say efficient, I mean adding some sort of efficiency, whether it be a CRO efficiency, or it be like, turns out we're charging too much for this product, we're going to lower the price. Conversely, you can increase the performance of every single ad creative, ad set, campaign, all ad campaigns in one good decision. So if you're the business and you're like, okay, I'm struggling with advertisement, it's like, okay, well, it's because you're amplifying a crap business. Like, you need to get this in check. You need to make sure that like your website's efficient, your price is good, that when they get it in their hands, they want to reorder, because there's no LTV if they get your product and it sucks. So all of these things are not the job of advertising to fix. advertising is going to amplify all of those bad decisions. It's the most cryptic. It's the most mysterious piece of your business, and you're relying on it to fix all your problems.
Yeah. And I think, again, we've covered this a lot on the podcast before, and we'll bring it to close now. I've just seen the time. It's been flying by, which is fantastic. But the last thing to say on that, something that we found more and more clients doing recently, partly through our recommendation, to try and solve the crap. I love the phrase crap business. I don't like using it because I wish there weren't any. But if you've got a crap product, the delivery's rubbish, people aren't going to reorder it, as you say. And if anything, they're going to return it. And your Google Ads is not going to report a return, is it? It's only going to tell you how many you've sold. So the thing we've been saying to businesses is go and ask your customers. Ask your good customers and the people that return stuff. Phone them up. Why did you return this item? What was bad about it? What can we do as the company to change this for you? We don't have time to cover that as a topic today, I'm afraid, but that would be my advice to anyone: is get that information. Analytics and Google Ads and Facebook Pixel and all that, they'll tell you what's happened, but they won't tell you why. And that's the thing we always come back to. So look, we're going to have you guys back at some point if you're welcome. So it's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us today. And sorry we've run out of time and that sort of thing. But yeah, absolute pleasure to have you both on the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
Cool. Well, yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you with us. Everyone listening at home, I hope this has been useful. Final question to you both as well then. How can people find you? How can they see the business? If they want to connect with you, are you guys on LinkedIn? Like, what's the best way to reach out? MacCoy, let's go to you first.
You can find our business at portlandleathergoods.com. We also just started a sister company we're really excited about. That's patina.com. Watch out for us. We're coming for you. That's next year. And then me personally, I think I'm on LinkedIn, but I'm too busy, man. I don't do social media.
That's fine. Absolutely fine. But Matt, how can people reach out to you as well?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I like to browse that a little bit. But yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. And if you go to Portland Leather Goods on Google, please don't click that brand ad. Save me that 20 cents. But, yeah.
Don't click the brand ad. The amount of times I tell clients not to click on their own ads as well. But look, thank you both for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Everybody else listening, we're back again next Friday. We've got a few more weeks left on retention, as with retention.com, talking about like LTV and all that sort of stuff. Also to announce, and this is an announcement, I'm going to announce a big announcement for next week that I'm not going to tell you this week. So stay tuned for next week. Hopefully it'll be next week we're going to announce it. Something quite big's coming. But what we are going to be doing towards the end of Feb, which is quite exciting as well, is we're going to have a panel. So we're going to have, we mentioned Adam from retention. We've got Adam coming back and a few others. So make sure you tune in for the last episode of Feb and all the episodes in the middle. Thanks for tuning in today. And we look forward to having you again next week.